This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 50th edition of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio. I have as my special guest today Bill Hogan. Bill is a former college athletic director at Seattle University. He's also served as a college athletic director at a couple other universities. Bill, before I go further with you, I want to go over some housekeeping things. I want to recognize my engineer today, James Gerd. James is the host of the After Dark show at Rainier Avenue Radio. We have some great things going on in our sports department on the World Wide Web at RainierAvenueRadio.world. We have sports shows hosted by Rick Dupree. Granville Emerson, Renault Laurent host a show called Lidline Sports. Masvita Marari is a host of Seattle Sports Weekly. Pat McCarthy and Masvita also co-host a show on the Seattle Metro Sports Conference. And Mark Bryant has a fitness-based show. And Juan Cotto and Mike Cobrisi host a new sports show. So a lot of stuff going on here at my Rainier Avenue Radio sports department. We're on the World Wide Web, RainierAvenueRadio.world. Well, let me go back to you now, Bill. Bill Hogan is my guest today. Bill and his wife, Sally, have been personal friends of mine now for about a decade. Bill has a wealth of experience in pretty much all aspects of American college sports. His CV is very extensive. Bill served from about 2006 through 2016 as the athletic director at Seattle University. He also served about a year at Seattle U as the assistant for vice president for athletic advancement before he left in 2017. Bill has a bachelor's degree, a master's in education, a PhD in educational administration and supervision with an emphasis on sports administration. Do I have that right, Bill?
I think you do, but it's been so long ago, but I probably don't remember exactly what it is. That sounds about right.
Okay, well, you're being humble, Bill, but you got your PhD at Bowling Green University in Ohio. Bill's taught at several universities. Bill also served as a head men's basketball coach at one time at St. Joseph's College, Indiana. He's now back at St. Joseph's University as the vice president for advancement. I think Bill started that position about late 2017. Bill served as the athletic director at St. Joseph's. He was the AD at University of San Francisco for about 15 years, and he had a run at Seattle University for about a decade. Well, Bill, we're going to have a conversation about your career a bit. College sports matters. Certainly not going to get in everything, but I think we'll have some fun hitting on a variety of topics. And, Bill, I picked your brain over the years, and I've chatted up with you, and I really appreciate you coming on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio.
It's a pleasure to be here, Paul, and it was good to visit with you there briefly. I don't get back to Seattle as often. It was my favorite city in the world to live, and I only get back there once or twice a year right now.
Well, I hope to see you more, and we have a nice tie, and you and I are definitely going to stay in touch. Well, Bill, you have a long career working in American higher education. Why don't you share with us for a minute how you got the bug to want to work in higher education with a focus for so many years in college athletic administration? How'd you get that bug as a young person?
Interesting. It started at St. Joe. I basically wanted to be a basketball coach my entire career. I coached a couple years in high school, then was an assistant coach at Bowling Green. And I kept going to grad school, and I was trying to get a full-time position. I was always part-time there for the most part, and just never worked out. I just kept going to grad school and ended up with a PhD. And then my alma mater, St. Joseph College, where I played basketball, back then in the early 70s, it was University Division and College Division. We went to a national championship. Should have won. It still bothers me. But we got to the national championship, and that was 1974. And I came back in 1981. I was a tenured professor, a basketball coach, and the director of athletics at 20 years of age. And that's kind of when it started. My president at the time, Father Charles Bannett, just appointed me as the athletic director, and that's how it kind of got started way back in 1982, I think, or 81, 82. And just did that for a while. I was also coaching, but then the three-point shot and the shot clock came into play, and the winning percentage started going down. So I got frustrated with the coaching and also found I really enjoyed administration. Then the University of San Francisco, the famous Dons, they had a major scandal there back in 1983, and it was a violation. They dropped the men's basketball program for about 3 years. And so I got there in about 1991 and loved it, stayed there for about 15 years, and then got recruited by a search firm to come back and to bring Seattle University back to Division I, which no university has ever done that before, which kind of intrigued me, that whole concept. And as you know, Paul, we met a lot of great people there in the Seattle area, both from the University of Washington and from Seattle U, and Steve Looney and Dick Baird and all those folks that were just great friends. And we had a really, really very successful 10-year career there, and loved it and enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah, I like how you've kind of been a jack of all trades, Bill, in college athletics. You've done a little of everything, and it's interesting to learn more about your background. So, Bill, you have, as I mentioned in the introduction, you mentioned a minute ago, you have a master's degree in business education. You also have a PhD. Have you found those degrees helpful in your years as a college athletic director, those particular degrees?
Yes, I enjoyed my education at Bowling Green. The business education with the master's degree, it gave me a chance to teach business classes, which I really enjoyed doing my entire career. In fact, for my full-time teaching at St. Joe, I taught many classes at the University of San Francisco and Seattle University, including MBA classes, undergraduate business, sports management, master's degree classes. So, yeah, I thought that having the PhD was really crucial for me to continue to teach what I loved doing until maybe about 6-7 years ago. The task of taking the university back to Division I, which I mentioned had never been done before, it was a major time-consuming. And so after about 5 or 6 years of being a teacher in the Albert School of Business, I decided to just focus on rejuvenating the Seattle University basketball and baseball and soccer and tracks and fields and swimming and all those sports. So that was my inclination at the time, and it was a good time for me.
Well, you did a great job at Seattle U, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you.
This is Paul Schneiderman, host of Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with longtime college athletic administrator Bill Hogan. So, Bill, you're about the third college athletic director I've had a chance to interview, and I've learned more and more that fundraising is a big part of college sports, and I've learned that from getting to know you as well, and you've been a good fundraiser. So let me ask something, Bill. Can a college athletic director who has many talents, say, and working with coaches and students, he or she knows the NCAA bylaws, they know sports, but say the person has a lot of skills as an AD, but they're not a good fundraiser, can that person survive as an athletic director in this era?
It depends on what the university is looking for. I basically think there's about 4 different personality types, and if there's plenty of money in the till, in the budget, if that's not an issue to raise money, then obviously it does not have to be a fundraiser. But there's not that many of those types of programs around. You see these budgets now, the $150, $180 million. The Southeastern Conference in particular has some really large budgets based on their football program. So those folks, I think, tend to be more managers than fundraisers. But I think as you work your way up to that level, I think fundraising is a key because almost everybody needs money. And I think the donors, what I've noticed, especially now that I've been in this new role as a vice president of advancement here at my alma mater, what tends to happen is that the donor wants to be assured that whatever he or she is donating goes to what it's supposed to go to. And so the authority, the power, the position of the director of athletics becomes really, really crucial. So, for example, an associate athletic director as a fundraiser may not be as successful because the donor wants to be more confident that the person of a higher position can actually demonstrate where the money is going to be going to. So I found, I think it's pretty true, but I've met a lot of athletic directors over the years, and some of them have been highly successful without really being involved in fundraising, although they certainly had a number 2 person that was.
Well, interesting response, Bill. I'm kind of reading between the lines of your question. Let me know, or your answer. Let me know if I'm on the right track. I guess if it's a major athletic program at a university that already has a major pre-existing fundraising network, maybe the athletic director's fundraising abilities is less important. Is that a bad way to break it down?
Yeah, and I think it's also a bit of a personality thing. As you know, Paul, we spent a few nights out in Seattle enjoying the wonderful Seattle cityscape at times, and I think I really enjoyed it. I was probably in my my last 25 years of Division I athletics. I was probably out 5 to 7 nights a week, and literally, but I always enjoyed it. But I also think there's some folks that's just not their cup of tea, and and they preferred a more stable environment and more stable workload where they go 8 to 5 or 9 to 4, 9 to 6, whatever. But I always enjoyed the night activities and the socializing and the belonging to all the organizations and the clubs. And that just with the I was involved in Northwest Forum there in Seattle for many years, and I just enjoyed the golf outing there with all my buddies. I haven't seen them for about a year and a half or 2 years, so it was really fun to get back to the Northwest. And also, I was really involved in the sports commission there in Seattle and enjoyed that also. But Special Olympics was one of my favorite things. The 101 Club, all those things. I just really connected with a lot of people in Seattle and had a lot of good relationships and friendships there.
Well, no doubt about it, Bill. I mean, you really I couldn't get over how many people you got to know in your 11 or so years in Seattle. So, Bill, you mentioned a gentleman at the beginning, Steve Looney, and he's a mutual friend of ours. And Steve sadly passed in 2017. Real larger-in-life guy, just a great guy. He was a star basketball player at Seattle U in the 60s. Steve's a member of the Seattle U Sports Hall of Fame, and I was always honored to be your guy's sidekick at times. And, Bill, tell us a little about Steve. And I know you guys became really good friends. And what did Steve mean to you your years living in Seattle and your years at Seattle U?
What was interesting is, for whatever reason, Al Attles, the GM and vice president of the Golden State Warriors, when I moved to San Francisco, I did not know a single person. So Al Attles kind of introduced me to all bunch. I'll never forget that either. He introduced me to a lot of folks in San Francisco, and I really enjoyed that relationship. And then when I got to Seattle, I knew one person, only one, and then I met Steve Looney just through the basketball. They're the legends. They call the legends now,
right?
But it's a basketball group, and I met Steve Looney, and we just hit it off. I mean, I can't. And what I found unique about Steve is he was best friends with like about 100 people,
right?
So they all thought he was their best friend, but he just had that unique ability to really connect me with all kinds of people in the community. I've got a lot of friends that were Huskies and Cougars and Puget Sound, and I think Steve was just one of those unique people that he was so affable and so friendly, and he was so sincere that he just helped me be a lot of people. And what I learned in San Francisco, Paul, is it took me a while because I was basically from Rensselaer, Indiana, a little small 5,000 population city, and when I got to San Francisco, that was a huge task. But it took me a while to learn how to meet the centers of influence. And what I just read that is every city, no matter how big or small, there's people that can really make things happen. And it took me a while to learn that in San Francisco, but I think I learned it pretty well. So I made a point of reaching out to some of the really key people in the Seattle area when I first got there. And, the people had forgotten. It's been 33 years. San Francisco dropped their basketball team for 3 years. Well, Seattle University dropped from Division I for 33 years. So there's a huge gap. We were kind of forgotten from those glory days of Steve Looney and, of course, Elgin Baylor. I was just with Elgin a couple of weeks ago down in Los Angeles, and we were reminiscing about the 1958 team and going to the national championship, and then those great teams in the 60s and the 70s, and it all was dropped in 1980. So that part of just meeting lots of people in the Seattle area and having so many friends there that I think they'll be lifelong friends for me, at least. And it was just, I think Steve Looney played a big role in that.
Well, I love that. I just think it's so great you and I are having a couple minutes to talk about Steve. I would have had him on my show, but my show didn't get started about July 2017, and Steve passed a few months before then, so it's fun for you and I to have to share Steve a little bit with the listeners. Paul Schneiderman again on Sports and Stuff on Rainier Avenue Radio with longtime college athletic director Bill Hogan. So, Bill, you were the athletic director at St. Joseph's, University of San Francisco, and CLU, all really good schools. Do you think in some ways being athletic director at a smaller college versus a Power 5 conference can be a little bit more pure and wholesome in some ways?
That's kind of a good question. I think the old days where you kind of work your way up, even in coaching, like that Jim Beeline that just left Michigan to go to the pro team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. he worked his way up from the high school to small college to a little bit bigger college. Just kept working his way up. And I think in athletic administration, we used to do it that way too. But I think there's more folks that go to, if you want to end up at a big football school like a Pac-12 school, then you should probably start there. Instead of working your way up through some of the smaller schools and Division III, then Division II, then Division I. And I think football makes a huge difference. So I've been pleased with almost all the administrators I ever met at any level. The University of Washington, I got to know those folks pretty well. Washington State, I've always been impressed with the character of those folks. So no, I don't think so. I think that sometimes because a school is a high profile school, when something goes wrong, that becomes more of a media issue.
Right.
But things go wrong in the smaller schools too. I just think they're so few and far between. But as you know, Paul, when it does happen, it has a huge media impact for a period of time, and those things tend to go on for a bit, depending on how serious whatever the situation is. But no, I've been impressed with so many people that I've met along the way at all kinds of levels, D3, D2, at the highest level. One of my best friends is the athletic director at Duke, who was at Notre Dame before that, and he's as solid as a rock. And he and I went to St. Joe here together, actually, back in the 1970s, he and I and his wife. But I've always been impressed with a lot of friends that I met through him, and I don't think so. I think the one thing that probably we do in my three schools, they're all Catholic schools.
Right.
Obviously, St. Joe is a Precious Blood school, and then San Francisco and Seattle are both Jesuit schools. So I think there's a different culture. But I just found I enjoyed meeting lots of people from all kinds of different backgrounds at different universities.
So it's really kind of case by case. It's what's the best fit for a person. In terms of college sports, is kind of what I'm reading through your answer, Bill. So, Bill, when the historians look back, you've done a lot of unique stuff at all the universities you've worked out. So when the historians look back, Bill, and your time at Seattle U, what are the one or two things you want to most be remembered for your time working at Seattle University?
Oh, winning with integrity. I think it would be a big thing. We never had any kind of, everybody has these secondary violations. We never had a major violation. We had exceptional student athletes and coaches who won a lot. I think if you had told me that our coaches and our staff would win, I think it was like 41 championships over a 5-year period, Division I championships, if you had told me that in 2006, I'd said you're crazy. That's been impossible to do. But they were wonderful. We had great camaraderie. We just had people that were special. I can think of so many of the coaches there that just had a big impact. Julie Woodward and Pete Cooney, of course, in soccer, and we just did a lot of things well there with our student athletes. And then, of course, they were wonderful young people that were community leaders and truly lived up to the Jesuit ideals of being a scholar athlete, a student athlete. And I just was very grateful that I had that opportunity. And when you take something from the transition from Division II back to Division I, it's a huge task. And I just found it to be very beneficial to take one step at a time and not go too far down the road. And then when you get there, you kind of look back and you're just very grateful for all the wonderful people that helped us do a great job there. And so it's fun. And I'll always cherish this 10 years there.
Well, I think if I can shoot from the hip for a minute, it seems to me that the work you did in transitioning Seattle University men's basketball to Division I is certainly a big part of your legacy at Seattle U. I don't think you would disagree with that, huh?
No, I think it was interesting because I just had this thing about recruiting, and I've maybe because I was coaching one time, but I always thought it was helpful to be in an NBA arena to recruit for your college team, to actually practice there and play your games there. I learned that from a guy with the Miami Heat. He was at the University of Miami head coach, and he recruited a lot better when he shared his building with the Heat rather than when he had their own campus facility. But when I got to Seattle, we had the Sonics, and so I started working a lot of my friends down at the Seattle Center, and it just kind of all came together, and we had those really good years there of playing some pretty competitive basketball. And the transition is really hard. For those that don't know, instead of back in the old days just being a year or two where you could just transition to Division I, when Salem University, it was a 5-year process. And during those 5 years, you're not eligible for the NCAA tournament, which you might imagine, Paul, that doesn't help recruiting, especially in men's basketball.
Oh, yeah.
And, so it's one of those things where playing the games at Key Arena was a real attraction, and it's a wonderful facility. I know they're remodeling it for hockey right now and hopefully for basketball in the future, but I think that was a really important moment that we come back to Division I to make as big a splash. Because what you really want to do with Division I athletics is you want to be the front porch of your university, the front porch of your house, the house being the university. So Division I athletics gives you a platform that's unique, and it's there's nothing like having your school mentioned for making the NCAA tournament and winning an NCAA soccer match or baseball, winning a championship in baseball with Donnie Harrell. Those things were all really special moments, and it helped elevate the university and within the community.
Well, a lot of good stuff you did at Sal Ewan. There's a lot of good stuff going on there right now. Paul Schneiderman again on sports and stuff with former Sal University Athletic Director Bill Hogan. So, Bill, I want to hit on a few kind of juicy topics. We got, Jason, maybe 7-8 minutes left. I want to get your snapshot take on some heavier topics. So one thing that's in news right now is women's soccer. The World Cup's going on, and some of the experts believe that women's soccer really stands out in the U.S. Soccer is not the most popular sport in the U.S. compared to other countries, but a lot of the experts believe that women's soccer is really big in the U.S. compared to many other countries. Do you see the future of college women's soccer getting bigger and bigger, Bill?
I think gender equity within back in the 1970s laid the foundation for outstanding women's sports in the United States at the collegiate level. And it's not just, I don't think it's just soccer, but obviously that's the world game. But you can see the skill level of our women's soccer players are far advanced, because I think that I go back to Title IX. I was a big supporter of it. I always made a point at every college or university that I was at that the equitable treatment of the women's athletes was really important to me personally. I just talked about this the other day because my family went to High School Hall of Fame back here in Ohio, and my sister actually was the best shooter of all the Hogan kids. So
Really?
Five boys played basketball, and my sister, she didn't have a team. She couldn't play back in the 60s. And I was given they asked me to make a speech for the family, and it just resonated with me that she didn't have a chance that so many young women have opportunities now. And I'm thrilled to see the success. And the other thing I will say this, Paul, is I noticed, and I've been an athletic director for 35 years, I noticed that as soon as the fathers figured out that their daughter could get a full scholarship in athletics, they spent a lot of time helping the young person develop athletically. In fact, a lot of them got into coaching. How many times you run into a soccer coach at one of those club teams that never played soccer, but he got involved in soccer because his daughter was playing.
Great point.
So I think it's just been a blessing. I think we're so far advanced from probably every other country in the world just because we had Title IX and it had a huge positive impact, and thank God for that and the impact it's had on our women's sports teams.
Well, I see that too in my little circles. A lot of dads that have daughters playing sports, they really get more excited about women's sports, and I think it'll have some long-lasting effects. Well, Bill, we got a couple minutes left. I can't believe how fast these conversations go. Bill, this is a big topic, and the whole issue of compensating student athletes is one of those just really big debates. And there's been some partial victories for those supporting pay for student athletes. I mean, the Ed O'Bannon case came down a couple years ago, where it was ruled the NCAA ban on compensating athletes for commercial use of their names and so forth as antitrust violation. Another case came down, Alston, that the NCAA cannot limit compensation or benefits related to education for certain athletes, Division I men's players, women's basketball players, I think Bulls subdivision football players. Just any general thoughts, Bill, on these cases and just sort of that whole topic of paying athletes? I mean, do you have any unique insights on this, Bill?
Yeah, I think back in the old days, and Steve Lynn and I used to talk about this because he had several teammates from L.A. and so forth that really couldn't afford to go out and buy a hamburger. You just had a room board, tuition, books, and fees. It was all the full scholarship was at one point. And I think what's happened lately, in a good way, is that now you have the Pell Grant, which if you are financially disadvantaged, that's going to be $7,000-8,000 a year. You also have the new the scholarships can be greater than the actual room, board, tuition, books, and fees. It's called the cost of living, and that depends on what school you're at, what university, but that can be additional money. And I do think that there's so many advantages now that there's no longer a financial burden for the student athletes like it used to be back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So, I never will be in favor of paying student athletes. That's one of the reasons, is because I think they're taken care of pretty well now. But then you have to figure what sports. I mean, is your tennis team less important than your baseball team or your basketball team? And it can get to be very expensive at some point. So no, I'm not in favor of, never have been, never will be. I think that there's some of those compensation things that, I've heard all the arguments. Well, that particular jersey sells a lot, but you get a free education that can last a lifetime. I mean, we all know that a 4-year college degree has a big impact on the individual for the rest of their life. I think the average income is like over $1 million more if you get a 4-year degree versus if you don't go to college. So you also have to think about that from a long-term perspective. But yeah, I'm one of those that will never agree with that. But I understand how years ago, decades ago, where it was more of a trying period for some student athletes.
Well, Bill, we got less than a minute left. I'd love to have more of a back and forth on you on all these subjects, but these interviews go so quickly. Tell us a little bit about your work at St. Joseph's and what's in the future for Bill Hogan. We got less than a minute left.
Yeah, very quickly. It's my alma mater. It's a wonderful little Catholic college in the middle of nowhere, literally halfway between Chicago and Indianapolis, and it's in a special location, very remote. And they did what many other schools have done. They kind of struggled financially, and we suspended operations back in 2017. And then the chairman of the board was a classmate of mine. He just asked me if I would come back and kind of help revive it. And here's what's interesting is I mentioned earlier that no one's ever gone back to Division I from Division II before, and no one's ever come back from suspension before. So it's one of those huge challenges that I'm enjoying. I'm getting a chance to see some old friends. It's been 25, 26 years that I've had much communication with them, but it's been enjoyable. I've had to adjust to living in rural Indiana after living in the great city of Seattle, but I think I'm doing okay. I go back and forth. My wife mostly, she still lives in Seattle, so she goes back and forth more than I. So I should come here on Friday, and that's probably the only downside.
Bill, hate to cut you off. We got to end the interview. I really enjoyed our conversation. Stay in touch.
Thank you, Paul. You take care.
Take care.
See you.